Recording. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, good morning, James. Thank you for being with us. I want to say a few words of introductory on James, not too many. Dr. James Moore is an assistant professor of Near Eastern and South Asian languages and cultures and the director of the Digital Lab for Ancient Textual Objects at The Ohio State University. And without any other words, I will leave the floor to you, James. And I'm sharing on the chat the YouTube channel where the recording of this talk will be uploaded in the coming days. So just go there and look for it.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to share a complete desktop here. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm
Yes,
going to, Zoom gets in the way all the time. I'm going to share the presentation and hopefully you can see the slides.
definitely. Okay.
So first of all, and they should work. Okay. First of all, I'd like to begin by thanking the Center for AI and Data Science at the University of Tel Aviv, and especially Vered and Letizia for organizing this and working with my schedule. I very much appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here. And thanks for this invitation. My field of ancient Near Eastern studies, and mostly your fields also, but also ancient studies in general, I think is in a transitional phase. We're moving, I hope, from previous generations of scholars who co-opt or work collaboratively with technical experts to a generation of scholars who learn discipline-specific technical skills. That means, though, that this transitional phase requires people to create those discipline-specific technical skills. I was asked to speak today about one of the projects that I have live at the moment, and this is known as the DEAPS project. And we'll get to that. But before we get there, I wanted to give you some background and tell you what DEAPS is actually a part of. It's part of something a bit larger. And this is known as the Digital Lab for Ancient Textual Objects. We use the acronym DILADO. It sort of rolls off the tongue, and it's also an acronym that's not on the internet very much, so it'll bring people to our site more easily. So it sounds like, Italian ice cream or something, people say. But what it is a digital and next generation sort of research environment. It's a digital and conceptual laboratory for the curation of ancient data. And I conceived of the lab when I got to Ohio State in order to combat a number of problems I found dealing with ancient Near Eastern digital projects that I'd been working on in the past in Europe. So the main objectives were to combat a few areas. One was digital incompetency, and we created a mission statement in which we desire to teach philologically minded ancient students ancient studies students, how to use digital tools. And this is, I think, one of the biggest things that our larger lab is a part of and making a difference in. The other thing we wanted to combat was inefficiency. I was very surprised at how inefficient many of the projects I worked with were in Europe. And it was inefficient in a few categories, and some of these you may feel some of these in your own work: cost, labor, and time. And the goal of the lab was to make digital editions and resources available to the scholarly community and the public as quickly as possible. And we made this sort of general statement to cover these inefficiencies in hopes that we can drill down in just a second and solve some of these problems. The last problem I find digital projects tend to have is longevity. And to solve this, we created a mission statement in which we use technological resources to enhance the study and preservation of ancient textual objects. So our job is digital preservation, but also the preservation of the digital itself. And so matters of longevity are very, very important to us. Let me drill down on a couple of these things that the lab focuses on so that you get a better sense of what I mean. I'm going to group some of them together. First is education and teaching. This is how we combat our lack of proficiency among our ancient Near Eastern students. Again, I believe that the onus is on my generation of scholars to invest in their own professional development for the sake of the field. This means that we're learning computer languages, we're learning software, and we're using these in our work so that we can start to teach them to our students. We're not going to be necessarily great at it, but hopefully our students will be much better than we are in the next generation. What I did a number of years ago in Berlin when I was there at the Humboldt University, I would teach occasionally a course called the Digital Editions of Ancient Textual Artifacts, Ancient Texts and Artifacts. And the primary purpose of this class was to teach students how to code in SQL, relational database languages. We focus primarily on Postgres because this is one of the best relational database softwares out there, and it's also the most resilient. Almost all of our colleagues in sciences use this, whether they know it or not, for most of their work, and so it has a big following. It's very stable, and so I teach it old school. Also, we're using CLI. We're just sitting there in terminal and typing away, building our databases, and um, I do introduce a number of things and tools that will be helpful for the students as they move forward in their career, like how full stack development works, and also web application development in more nuanced ways. They do get to explore a little bit of this, but for us, the focus is really on this back end SQL training. I do also show them data visualization techniques and software, particularly the open source software that many projects on a budget would be using rather than the really high-end stuff, things like Gephi and Orange, and they explore these and work on them with their projects for the final project. I did write up an article many years ago explaining my approach and why I was building the class this way. I will say that this article is a bit dated now. It's about 5 or 6 years old. And it's dated mainly because back then there was not much accessibility to LLMs and AI models, AI bots. And now that that's in the field, it's an entirely different game. And I still run the class. They're still learning coding and stuff. But I'm incorporating new strategies for them, and we're taking AI in all sorts of directions. What this means, though, is when I brought this to OSU, I started requiring all of our NELC, Near Eastern Language and Culture graduate students, particularly the PhDs, to take this class. It's part of their curriculum. They must take it. And so, um, as far as I know, we've become the only PhD program in the world that actually requires students to learn computer languages and skills alongside their traditional philological training. My language courses also are venues for me to help train students and combat this proficiency, lack of proficiency in the field. So, for instance, when I teach Syriac or I'm teaching Phoenician this semester, the students will be working directly in the database. They'll be adding text to the database. They'll be doing their grammatical analyses and lexical analyses within larger research environments that I have in the Delado lab. And even some of my undergraduate classes. So I have a class on ancient economies, which teaches students um, how to use spreadsheets and AI in order to create quantitative and qualitative assessments of ancient economic data. And so this is sort of a precursor to the SQL class. If someone knows how to work well on a spreadsheet, they're going to do very well on the SQL class. And then we also offer practicums. So beyond the classroom, we fund students as often as possible to work in the summers. And we also are now doing independent studies. On campus, we have our own development lab, um, separate from our digital lab here. This is the tech lab that does web development for arts and sciences. And they're very open to working with our students as well. And so, for instance, I'm leading an independent study with a student this semester who, on his own, took the initiative because he just wanted to learn how to code and build web apps better. to build a really interesting app that uses AI to OCR ancient manuscripts. I realized that there are some softwares out there already, but he wanted to just do it from scratch, and he's done a great job. And we're going to streamline these things and take it into a different direction as part of his training. That's how we combat the lack of proficiency in our lab. The other thing we do is combat inefficiency. And here I'm going to lump cost and longevity together. And I'll say that there are really three primary issues here, and this is the price of technical labor and then the need of technical labor. So it's how often you might need it in a particular project, and then, of course, infrastructure. So the way our lab combats these things is we draw solutions to points one and two, again, by training, because we found over the years that, listen, if you've got a 3 or 5 year project and you have a certain budget for tech, most of the time you're dealing with language students who are extremely bright PhDs or PhDs in training. It's not that hard for them to learn a computer language like SQL, and maybe a 1 to 3 months of training in that is much more efficient than hiring outside tech consultants. And it saves a lot of money in the end and a lot of headache. And so we focus our team training on solving inefficiency problems by also bringing it into the financial discussion. The solution, I think, to the infrastructure issue is just collaboration because not every institution and not every scholar in every place has the same kind of access. And so the more that we can collaborate, one, that means the less we're duplicating data and projects, and two, it makes it financially more viable. So I would highly recommend that you really start to tap scholars who are working in US public R1 institutions. R1 is a research rating in the US. It means the highest level of research is conducted at this particular institution. And I also recommend it be public. The private institutions can be very, very expensive on this front, but the public institutions often have technical components or technical departments that help subsidize this type of research for its and creation of research for its faculty. So I'd highly recommend this. The other thing, as I was racking my brain with my own experience, there's probably other examples out there, but the only other ones that I've worked with is the humanum. So if you have French colleagues, I'd highly recommend making sure that you at least utilize, if only for backup purposes, the humanum. If you're not familiar with that project, it was this sort of bold thing that the French did to support research in the digital sphere and to provide what used to be, I think it's still free to French researchers, just a web server or servers that then can be used for archiving, but as far as I understand, also web production and such. The difference, though, is that at the US institutions, you're often working with a team of developers who are helping to secure the website because that's part of the mission of the university, right? Firewalls and everything else. And so they're often developing the websites if you're doing a website version. If you're just doing research in the back end, oftentimes this is all just free. They give you space and you start working. If you're starting to publicize it, then they'll help solve problems for you as upgrades happen. It's really kind of great. To give you an example, the DEAPS project that you'll see in a second, when you ping this site, it goes to randomly to any one of 3 servers. Last month, we were getting errors sometimes. They were inconsistent errors, don't know why they were happening. And then chatted with the dev team, and it turned out that, well, we needed an upgrade on an Apache license for the web app on one of the servers. And they just did it. That was it. We didn't have to do it. We could have done it, but we didn't have to do it. And they just take care of this stuff. And it's extremely cost effective. So at my institution, I'm able to host, again, all my backend stuff for basically free. They don't charge me anything, but anything that's published through the dev team and the web, they maintain it. They even do upgrades. They'll even change the websites for you and give you new search options and things if you ask. for a cost of 5 years for 500 US dollars. You pay it in a 5 year interval because they're interested in longevity as well, and you can buy credits indefinitely into the future. So our websites are well taken care of in this sense. The last thing is the notion of inefficiency and time, and this is where I would say, when possible, stick to something like SQL. Avoid older, slower, and laborious tech like markup languages. Um, I've worked on both types of projects, and I can say, in terms of efficiency, my own output, I was working almost 1,000% faster in SQL than I was in any markup language. And then optimize tools with AI. This is a great opportunity now to do this. And what AI has done is it's allowed the humanities access to possibilities that oftentimes only our colleagues in science were able to do because they were so expensive in term and laborious. To give you an example here, you'll see that we have GIS coordinates for our textual objects and things. And when I was trying to update a list of them, I had like 400 sites that I needed to put in the GIS coordinates. Postgres requires those in a slightly different format than anywhere else. And it was going to be quite complicated because it was going to take me easily 2, 3, 4 hours to do. And I had one of our specially trained AI bots just do it for me. And it took less than a minute for them to fill out the rest of my spreadsheet. And then I uploaded into the database and we were off and running. I mean, and we do this kind of stuff all the time. And we use it also to help streamline our code and our scripts, both in SQL or Python or whatever we're working in. And almost lastly, websites. So limit the APIs as much as possible. And what we do is we build everything in Postgres. We even anticipate all of the querying that the user is going to want and the website. How the website will function. We anticipate all of that. We build views and such in the back end so that the API is basically just calling very simple calls to views so that these operations aren't happening in the API. One, this significantly reduces the cost for the dev team, both in their financial cost and time, but also for your projects, it makes it more portable. Sometimes you're a postdoc or you're a scholar who's in between jobs or something, and you build something. If everything is really functioning in the back end, you can take that and dump it somewhere else, spin it up, and then make another simple front end, or even clone the front end, and you're on your way. It's quite efficient, and so that's why we support this and from the lab's perspective. And then any multi-project platforms are always based on clones. And so we have a number of sub-projects. And then also we work with collaborators internationally. And the point is to structure as much as possible the databases the same so that it's much easier for them to share data and to talk to each other around the world. So let's now start getting into what we're doing with DEAPS. And this begins with the model of the core database. So the Lotto core database begins with a textual object. This was because of my experience working in museums, I thought that it was nice to run everything around a textual object rather than a document, right? An object can have multiple documents. So this seemed to be the better solution, I think, for our particular goals. And the database is structured so that you have on one part of it a basic description, and this can be worked out in all sorts of directions from just storing links to the photographs, history of acquisition, physical characteristics, archaeological context, locations, dates, bibliography. And in this sense, you have a simple, straightforward database, but it's also the kind of database that any archaeologist is going to need and use. And so we also train our students who are in archaeology and anthropology. They come over and they take our classes in order to prepare for their own work. In terms of a philologist, we're interested in the textual content. And so we've built out a larger side of the database. This is a bit more complex because we're basically in one way or another, hacking all of the abilities of Postgres in order to use it on linguistic data. And so we build it out so that we have at the base, we have transliterations of the text, translations, grammatical analysis as possible, all this quote unquote tagging, as well as lexical information and word list. And the lexicon is a beast to itself, and it can be built out in all sorts of directions to be an actual full academic reference lexicon. And then what's in pink are just sub-projects that just for a matter of research inquiry, I've developed parts of my own research database in different directions. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. In sum, here's how the database works in our structure. Everything that the researchers do happens only in the back end and happens in a sandbox. This is where we're playing, we're doing things, we're building out schemas for our own personal research interest and everything else. The limited amount of that we want to push to a project so that it's actually a reference work for the rest of the field is then cloned into a rather simple web database that's built off of the core structure. And every week or so, it pushes to this, and then it pushes to the website. And that's the structure that we've come up with. When we come back to some of the things that we're doing on the research end that you won't see on our websites, but we're actually performing are things like advanced paleographic analysis and prosopographic analysis. Here's a link to a talk that I gave that blends two of these things together, and I'll give you a quick example. What I did in that talk was I took the dated documents from Elephantini, the dated contracts, which at the bottom have different writers, witnesses signing in their own hands. So we have on any given contract between 5 to 9 different hands. And from a paleographic point of view, I just asked the database to take those names, to break them down by letter, and then break those letters down by strokes so that I can analyze in some consistent way the strokes. And then much of this was automated, especially when it came to the larger document that the entire notary was writing. I just had to ask the computer to give us all of his letters and the way that they're standardized in his writing. And then I go through and I check for the deviances. And the result was rather clear. And you'll see it in the video if you watch it, that what we can do is combine this with the prosopography and the onomasticon and realize that there are different educational traditions depending on who's writing their own names. So maybe a Caspian is writing their letters from left to right rather than right to left. And you can start to then make historical claims about actual learning traditions and scribal traditions in a way that could have not otherwise been possible in studies. Okay, let me get you now in the last half of the talk directly into the DEAPS project. And we'll go over here. Okay, can you see the website, I hope? Good? Okay, good. So when you come to the DEAPS project is the digital editions of Aramaic and Phoenician sources. It's one of our 2 up and running Delato projects right now. We have others in the works that are working with classics and other departments in our university, as well as some international colleagues. But this project is really a byproduct of just the back end of my own research database. And the site is pretty simple when you come to it. It's a simple search site. You can go to the About. It can take you to the Delato site, and you can learn more about how the lab is working. But it can also, you'll also see our editorial conventions and everything. But the big thing that you're going to want to do is to search the database. You can search a simple search, or you can drill down and search a handful of different fields. So you can search text strings, and this would be translations. I'm sorry, the ancient source itself. We're doing everything right now in Unicode. We will, we have been asked, and we will eventually change it so that the different Unicode is visible, but you can search in across all types of Unicode. So, for instance, in ancient Aramaic, Imperial Aramaic, there is a Unicode font for this, but we've typed everything in Unicode Hebrew, and so you search in Hebrew right now, but it'll be possible later if you want. You can search in that, or you can search in Romanized characters. Doesn't matter. All this is very easy because the database will switch back and forth between these languages if needed. Um, we're also in the development to add a handful of other categories here, but those won't be live until the end of the semester. If for any reason you have any more categories or things you want to search, just email and we'll talk about it. We almost certainly have the stuff in the database already. It's just a matter of what we're pushing to the website is still quite limited. I thought for an example, I would give you a an inscription from Deuskalion here, an ancient imperial Aramaic inscription that was found in northern Anatolia. And what happens every time you search, you'll see a map view where you can click on different locations. We have both collection location and find spot. At the end of the month, you'll be able to check these off so that you have just find spots or just collections. And then you get your list of objects, and you can click onto your object. And then the object has basic information you'd expect. So your basic metadata information, this is the description, if you're thinking about that chart of the database that I showed you. You've got all sorts of descriptive information, and then you have some general notes. Below this would also be textual notes, if any one of us has left textual notes on an object. You have a bibliography. I'll show you the bibliography in a second. It's linked to a Zotero API. If there are images, you'll see images here. Now, what we've done with the images so far, while I have tens of thousands of image files for many of the objects, I haven't yet uploaded those. What we're doing is, as part of a larger collaborative effort, is linking images that are also already available online. And so we give them full credit, you get the sites, and you get those links. And then you get the text and translation of any particular object. And this will be any length. This window will scroll if the texts are very long. So for instance, the Ahikar manuscript has almost 1,300 lines of Aramaic text, and you can scroll through that, and you'll see it here. We also introduced this little toggle here so that if there are different editions in the database, published editions, you can go ahead and click those. In this particular instance, they also go back to the bibliographies. So in this particular instance, you'll see that the readings are the same. It's a rather easy text. So what's more interesting are not the additions in this one, but the different translations that might be available so that you can interpret the texts. Now, we've also, like I said, incorporated grammatical analyses and lexical analyses. And so any given word in the original language you can click on, an apparatus will pop up. And this apparatus will have the basic information from the lexicon, so basic part of speech, also basic definition, and then it'll give you the basic grammatical analysis. So the primary verb here is a presuffixal noun with a preposition lamed, and then a masculine singular nominative suffix. And so this is the basics of any given entry in the DEAPS project. Let me show you a bit more about what you can do. So if we go then to the bibliography, the bibliography is connected to a Zotero web library that any one of us working on the project on our own machines, we can dump our resources in. And then this will, through a couple of seconds of clicking, end up pushing the entire Zotero library into the database. And then from there, you can tag or connect that entry to anything else. So just last week, I was working on something that was published in the 50s by Dupont-Sommer. And so this particular search is a little slower than our normal search because it's going through the Zotero API, but it's still relatively fast. And if you're working on something, an article or a book in which there are inscriptions, and if we've already linked them and already studied them, then they'll show up here, and then that'll be a way to get to that inscription really through the back door of the bibliography, or at least the back of the project here. And so you'll be able to then see what editions we have available and what readings and again any analyses that we've done. Now, we do have a lexicon, and I will say that the lexicon is not fully developed yet. We're still figuring out what to do with this, but I do want to show you a couple of things that working on in SQL in particular has just led to certain byproducts that we're able to do in the future. And it's just a matter now of having interested students who want to do this stuff. Because there's only so much time that I have or my colleague who works on the North Arabian database directs that, Ahmed Al-Jalal, there's only so much time he has as well. And so what we do with the lexicon is right now it's just basically a big word list as far as it shows up here on the website. And this word list, again, it's in Postgres, so it's a completely multilingual site or multilingual database. Here you see a Carian letter. Here you've got a lot of Syriac. Here you've got some Phoenician. Obviously, there's tons and tons of Imperial Aramaic because of the objective of what we were doing. But I will say that the structure of the database allows for a rather robust lexical analysis. And this is because once we have a textual object in, we break that textual object down by its words. Now, as I mentioned in the example of the paleography, we can break that further down by letter or by stroke, but we find word is a useful unit of measure for us to work with as humans. And so we keep it in the word at the word level. And every single word in the database is dumped into a single concordance, no matter what language or what object it comes from. And then once it gets into that concordance, the lexical database inside of, as a subcategory in a schema of its own, we can start tagging or making relationships between any given word and the lexicon. And once we do that, we can make our grammatical relationships, and then we can make our specific meaning instances as a relationship. This means that in this translation, this word means this. Once we have that info down, we have a very precise lexicon. It looks like a very traditional type of lexicon. We could publish it easily, just have it, the database format it for us and publish something. It'd be like a dictionary, like of Northwest Semitic languages and such. But what we can do, because we are working in a database that connects the content with the metadata, we get the opportunity to connect the meaning of the words to things like the find spot and all of the dates in the text, which means as a byproduct that we'd never even intended, instead of talking about old 19th century categories of things like Phoenician versus Punic or Old Aramaic versus Imperial Aramaic, we can watch the development of words and their meanings in time and space. And we will actually, for the final product of the lexicon part of the website, we will have we'll have a map for the lexical words the results that you get with a time slider on the bottom so that you can slide and see in locations where the words are attested, when, and what their meanings are. So these are the kinds of fun things that we're doing. Because digital preservation is meaningful, we also wanted to expand the way that we record the objects, especially when we're doing it firsthand for the first time. So we're going to collections or we're going to archaeological sites, or like Ahmed does and traipses out into the middle of the desert and finds all sorts of inscriptions on stones. We want to make sure that we're digitally preserving these as best as possible. Our lab has just won a big grant. We have a bunch of hardware coming in, 3D scanners and printers and stuff. And we'll start to take these out more. We already have and already do infrared photography and multispectral things when needed on site when we go to places. But we also team up with some of the best software that's already out there. So, for instance, if um, I was working on a project with some colleagues from Harvard, and they were republishing the site of ancient Eilat. Okay, so I went there and started working on the collection again, and I realized that there are misreadings in some of the texts. One of the things that was misread and that was very interesting was a collection of the stamp seals that were from ancient Eilat. And so what I did is I took these basic photos and I used software from that was developed in the digital epigraphy lab at the University of Florida. And they're free, open source. Again, US public institutions are very helpful in this sense. And I quickly made some RTI scans of this particular object by using their software, which is extremely nice. And the scans are made by simple two-dimensional photos. You can do this with iPhones, not the LiDAR of the iPhone, but just a regular photograph of any kind. Um, and you can start to better read the inscriptions. And this produces all sorts of new results, and it also better preserves the inscriptions for us. So these are the types of projects that we're collaborating with. One of the last things I wanted to say was be on the lookout for what we're doing next. Our next phase, and we're sort of test running it right now, but our hope is by the end of the year, we'll be able to be one of the first projects that's trying to crowdsource academic editions. And the goal is, if you're a scholar and you just publish something in a reputable journal, so it is published somewhere, and we'll send you basically a simple spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet just asks, really, it would be for 3 columns. I've shown you the full version of this of the simple spreadsheet. But all you would need to do is put your line orders of the text that you published in your article or your book in here, put your translation, and then put the text as you read it. That's it. Once that's done, we can easily um, import this into our research database, push it to the DEAPS website, and then send you a private link in which you can check to see if all of the grammatical taggings and lexical taggings match what you want them to be. If you want to make corrections to your articles, we can add those textual notes there too. And then it's really easy. And within almost no time, because you've basically copied and pasted from your manuscript, your work is also now more publicly available with links back to your original articles so that those can be read. The point here is to help bring out of the weeds a lot of the stuff that's hidden in publications. Right now, we're going through and trying to collect all of the Phoenician texts, for instance, that are known from the Eastern Mediterranean in the 6th through 3rd centuries BCE. Well, the problem is many of these are published in the backs of archaeological reports or just mentioned in passing in archaeological bulletins, or some of them are in rather obscure journals or in journals that we as normal Semitists don't normally look at. And so it would help all of us if we can just bring this stuff together. And at the very least, we're willing to do this. We have the student labor sometimes to do this for you if you just give us the information of your publication too. So bibliography building, everything is happening here in our research database. I think for now, I'll stop it here just to make sure that we have enough time for any questions or interests that you have. But thank you for letting me share this with you.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. Really fascinating. After years of playing around with this, not being archaeologist, not philologist, not Phoenician expert, but a DH person. Yes, the floor. Nathan, you want to ask a question? Please.
I just applaud, but um yes, but if I do have one question about searching the database. I saw that you can search text only by strings. Do you have a better way to look for lexemes or using the lexicon or something like this?
Yeah, for the user side, we don't yet, and that's where um, we wanted to not put labor into this until we know what people want and need. Um, so, for instance, if you go to any of the objects, there's always an option to send us an email. This could be a correction to any of the data, but it could also be a suggestion like that, asking why can't we search for stuff. You can also just email directly to the Delato website and say, hey, I would like to see this. And the more that we get those kinds of requests, then we'll actually put them into action. Certainly, we can do it all in the back end. I mean, this is what we work in every day is something like this. And I must also push Postico if you're doing this. This is by far the best app out there. It was actually it's an administrative SQL GUI, a graphic user interface. It's an administrative GUI, but it was written by a guy who also worked in his early days on Latin digital projects. And so he really knows how to streamline this for our kinds of instances. And you can always, at the Delato site itself, you'll see the affiliates, and this is a growing thing. I just updated this recently. There's the digital lab at the University of Florida that takes these basic two-dimensional photographs and turns them into RTI for you in less than a minute on their websites. And then there's Postico and things. So, Natan, I will certainly consider grammatical analysis as a search option, but the question becomes what kind of grammatical analysis someone wants to search, what's user-friendly, these kinds of things. So we're completely open to it. But right now, you're correct. You can only, for grammatical purposes, search just strings.
Thank you.
Please, Jonathan. You are on mute. You are on mute.
So, James, hi.
Jonathan, hi.
Good to see you with us this way or another.
Good to see you.
And thank you. That was really fabulous. I mean, I liked so much your first part about streamlining and efficiency, which is very important because we keep, as you know, we keep inventing the wheel. So we could somehow let you invent the wheel for us. That would be very helpful. But like use other people's wheels too. So I have like yeah, like a small detail in your website, and then also kind of a technical question. So the small detail is that when I looked up the lexicon in your website, so it's very, I mean, I just searched, yatav, like sit in Aramaic or something like that. The entry came out, but there was no it didn't lead me into occurrences of the
Yeah,
verb. So it's just the meaning, which I mean, like CAL, the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon does give that, and that's very helpful. You may want, and I guess it should be easily done.
it's very easily done, and we talked about that. That's on the list of things. We had a dev meeting
Mhm.
last week, and that's on the list of things that we're adding as soon as the team gets around to it. So this also again goes back to your point about efficiency. Our dev team is willing to make these corrections for us, especially if it's not too much labor, for absolutely free. I mean, so I just tell them what we want, and we work together on it, and they do it. So we'll try to get, especially that I absolutely forgot to add that early on. So Again, I just launched this thing. I did a soft launch of it in August, and now it's a bit more of a full launch. You had another question, Jonathan?
Yeah, so my other question is something you said earlier on about isolating letters and
Yep.
strokes.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate more about that? So how do you manually curate the letters? Do you manually mark them as a region
Yeah.
of interest, or you let somehow AI search it for you? And how you separate the strokes?
Yeah. So what we do is, what I did was, it's easy for the database to break strings down. So I broke the words down instantly into a table with every word, uh, every letter of every word
You're
in
talking
the
about the image or the transcription?
the transcription. I break
Mhm.
that down, and then I look at the image, and yes, I look at I look for the 22 different letters that the notary has written on this contract, and I go through and I carefully um, mark them, and I mark them with every script or every stroke possibility that I built a criteria for this, and I mark each one out. Well, after I've done 22 of them, I quickly scan the image again and make sure there's not obvious variances. So sometimes writers will use two different olives, for instance. And if so, I'll mark those. But then for almost all of our tagging at any level, whether it's lexical or grammatical, or in this case, paleographical, I run some scripts that I had written that will automatically fill out the rest of the table using deterministic probabilities. And then once that's automatically done, I then very quickly go through and read the manuscript again and check to make sure that this is the standardized stroke pattern for that letter for that writer. And when it's not, I mark it, and then I start to see the range of variants that a particular writer has in their hand. So in this case, are they using two different types of yods? This is quite common that they'll use two different, maybe three different types of yods. And I'll go through that. And then I'll make notes. And then now you're seeing how it can be more of a content-oriented study. But all of the stuff is automatically put together to have, I think I did for that presentation in Groningen a few years ago. And I've been meaning to publish it. It's just a matter of time. For that meeting, I think it took, I know I spent no more than a day on the whole presentation. That includes having the database do all the work, and I was able to analyze, I think, half of all of the Elephantini contracts.
But let
And
me ask you, I mean, this is amazing, but that a lot depends on you and your abilities, and also your expertise. And, I guess I can count on you in terms of marking up strokes for paleography. But when there's a random team of students doing that, don't you have kind of some suspicions about reliability? And like it's also, there's a lot of subjectivity there. That's the point.
there absolutely is. So one way to curb the subjectivity is to have a comprehensive and standard criteria for what strokes are and everything else, that every possible letter can fit this criteria and limit it to that. This is what everyone's using to analyze with. That's already changing the game. And then I also forgot to mention that we grab the images of the letters and we store them with the lines of rows so that on an actual spreadsheet you can see the letter with its analysis. You're absolutely right. There's levels of subjectivity and possibilities of error, but we're moving in this direction towards at least a more rational system. And the thing that it shows, just that little study, basically blew Neve's work out of the water. Everything Neve thought he knew about Imperial Aramaic doesn't work. Because we have every type of form in these contracts dated all at the same time. And so you can't say, oh, I know because I'm an expert that this group of documents came from this 15-year period because I said so. Not at all. And this kind of study at least brings us to a bit more of a scientific Wissenschaft type of approach to our paleographic research.
Yeah, sounds important.
Thanks. Good to see you.
I have another question. If Jonathan, it's okay?
Yes, I just saw a question in the chat.
Oh, I saw Letitia said she had to leave. And Gil is asking, yeah, let's ask. My question. If PhDs are the dev team, how do you plan for the next stages of the software development when the team will necessarily change? Disclosure, I am a DH contractor. Yeah, we know Gil, very good. And he is a DH dev.
Well, actually, I mean, some of my students that are now leaving, they want still the Delato lab to be the host for what they're working on because we have the infrastructure and it's free. And so they are leaving, they are wanting to do larger projects elsewhere. And they can take their work and do it there too. But what they develop here is often able to be picked up by the next generation of students. Certainly, some highly technical things, this is not possible. But we haven't at this stage encountered anything that at least I don't understand and can help guide other students to work in that direction.
Thank you. Yeah, Gil is a thumb up from Gil. I wanted to ask something about hyperlinks, and I saw in the lexicon that each word is you can click on it and it gives you the grammatical apparatus.
Yep.
And since you already have on the metadata a map, what about entities, place entities that are inside the text, the original text?
Yep.
And are also with coordinates and can be put on a map like all places that are mentioned in Phoenician inscriptions from this period to that period, something like that.
Yeah, that's absolutely easy to do. We haven't done it yet. Again, this was originally built out of my own personal research database that I had been fine-tuning over the last decade, and I just decided that students needed to get involved and also to push it to the website for researchers. So that's an easy, super easy thing to do. Again, even with AI help, we could have that. I mean, in the back end, I could have that done in no time at all. I mean, 5 or 10 minutes. But in the front end, we'd have to add, construction and build. So if you were a researcher working on our projects, then you could easily do that. And by the time I finish speaking this, you'd be able to start searching in that direction. But for the website, it's a different story. And that's absolutely a good thing to consider. We actually considered that. One thing we actually would like to do is also work with modern historians who are working on the history of scholarship. I spent a lot of time working in the Institut de France, where the CIS is, and reading all of the old diaries and journals of Clermont Ganneau and Vauguet and these guys and Maspero. And what we would like to do is scan all of those. Many of them we've scanned already, but scan all of those and then make a map on top of our current map following those ancient explorers through their expeditions and making notes to their diaries where they mention the inscriptions they found and things like this. We want to really do this for the North Arabian corpus because that's really, really important. So, yeah, these kinds of things are very, very easy. It's just a matter of finding students who have the interest and want to be in a PhD program, and we'll work hard enough to make this happen. The sky's the limit, as we say.
Amazing. I will turn off the recording.